Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Players NIL podcast. My guest today is Mr. Mario Scott. Mario, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, Mark.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story. The Players NIL is about education and specifically using education and athletics to better the lives of the people around us. You have a great story about what you do, and we'll get to that. But I want to talk about you a little bit.
Sure.
And I talk about two words, sports and athletics. Athletics is, when you became a competitor and started to play, we'll ask that question. But tell me about your history with sports. Where were you? You're from Europe, you're from Germany. What was your first exposure? It probably was European football or what we call soccer. But
Absolutely.
You tell me your early memories of being exposed to athletes and athletic competition.
Well, it's very interesting. I'm from Berlin, Germany originally. And so that's my home city. And but I spent most of my childhood either in Berlin or Frankfurt. So more of my adolescence was in Frankfurt. So more of my memories were more around the Frankfurt area. But my first contact to sport was actually because I was one of these kids that was deemed as like hyperactive when I was in elementary school, probably around kindergarten in the first grade. And I remember that, ironically, that one of the teachers had suggested that, well, maybe your son needs like Ritalin or something. And my mom didn't. My mom was a nurse and didn't really feel like that I had any issues, and was talking to some of her friends, and they said, you know what? Maybe you just got to put him in sports. Like maybe he just has this energy that just needs to be released somehow. He's not a kid that just wants to sit down for 8 hours a day. And literally my mom, as any as stereotypical German would do, was like, well, I'm gonna put my son in soccer, right? And that did the trick. And I mean, it was something that allowed me to compete, allowed me to have, before I even knew what that meant really, even if it was just, hey, take this ball and kick it into that goal. But that was my earliest sort of connection to sports. So I really appreciate, in a deeper context, my mom taking the time not to just take the route of, let me put my son on medicine because somebody said he might be hyperactive, but really using sports as a vehicle, for me to be able to exercise that energy, and also what would become the foundation for shaping my life as it relates to athletics in general.
Yeah, great stories. Kudos to your mom. And so many of us probably took out all of our frustrations and energies on the athletic field. It was better than in the classroom or the playground, probably. So you get exposed to athletics. It changes your life in that it gives you a goal, gives you vision, all those things that we love about athletics. When did you know that you could use athletics to better your life, i.e., go to college, come to America? What was that transition like? Was there a moment?
Yeah, I would tell you an interesting moment actually. So when I started progressing really rapidly in soccer. I would like to say I was probably pretty darn good. And then my mother got married to an American military man who is my dad, still my hero to this day. And I would go to the gym with him. And that's how I got kind of introduced to basketball, probably a little bit later than most, right? So you're talking about maybe 10 or 11 is the first time. And then because they wanted me to learn English and to really kind of, deepen my understanding of the English language, I ended up going to American Middle School in Frankfurt, Germany, where I continued to progress and now kind of had an appetite to play football, American style football, and so I just kind of baseball. And so I just really immersed myself in all things sports. And then the first time, if I'm being honest, like the first time that I really felt like I could use sports, it wasn't probably the sport that I played the least was baseball. My team missed the Little League representing Europe in the Little League World Series by one game. But I remember I still have the baseball. I hit a home run, which was my first time ever really hitting a home run. And people kept saying, man, you run well. What other things do you do? And so it just kind of grew from there. And then my parents gave me the choice after 8th grade and said, do you want to go back to German school or do you want to go to American school? Because of basketball, I just really, that became sort of my focal sport. And then I went to high school and I started varsity as a freshman. And in my first game, I had 36 points. And I would say, I don't say that to say that I was that great. I just, once again, I kept it simple. I had a really good point guard who said, run. And that man found me more times than but then I was the freshman of the week and created this sort of buzz around myself. And that's the first time I really felt like maybe I could be pretty good, because everybody kept saying like, geez, the freshman just had 36 points his first game, 27 his second game. It was like the 66-point weekend at this small school that no one knew about. But that's when I really felt like maybe I can push this thing a little bit. And once again, then, before the era of a million trainers and all these nice gyms that we get to work in now, I was one of those kids that was outside with a virtually rubber basketball on these double rims, just trying to play no matter if it was raining or it was cold. And that really set me on my path.
Great story. So now you realize that you got a little juice.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to America? Where did you go to school? And tell us about your collegiate experience.
Yeah, very interesting. So I did a couple of basketball camps, and I remember Coach Ron Slaymaker from, at that point, I mean, he's retired now, but from Emporia State in Kansas, a Division II school, came over and did a basketball camp and really liked me. And that sort of, once again, kind of just even planted that seed more. Like I want to see how far I could go. So between my junior and senior year, so weird to say like VHS now, right? Because I was in Germany, and then I started running into this perceived roadblock of, you're good, but you're in Germany, you're 6'2", you're not 6'10", right? And so what I did, I had one of my classmates record my games and put a highlight tape together. And I remember I mailed out 12 VHSs. Like, so mind you, I would bag groceries to Commerce and spend my own money to mail them out. And I mailed it out to like the likes of North Carolina and Georgetown and mind you, dude, because I'm thinking like,
you're going to the top.
Yeah, I was like, hey, these are the schools I like. But mind you, so what I did though, I sent it to 6 big schools and 6 small schools, like Alabama State, like some HBCUs, because I had teachers that were HBCU grads. And I was thinking like the small schools would be the ones that would go, hey, let's talk. And the big schools would be like, whatever. But actually, interestingly enough, the inverse happened. I never heard a thing from small schools. North Carolina had reached out and talked and sent me information about potentially doing a post-grad year. And as I mentioned, Georgetown, the coach was calling my parents. Like, so it was this weird sort of dichotomy because, my parents didn't go to college and things like that. So we didn't even know what all of this meant. And then there was some recruiter that would always send my parents and me updates on like, your son's doing really well. I've been talking to college coaches and I never met this person ever. And so I thought once the Coach Esrick from Georgetown was calling that I would end up at Georgetown. And then when that fell through, I had a number of teachers that were South Carolina State grads said, how would you like to go to South Carolina State? It's an HBCU. And I didn't really understand all of, the culture around HBCUs at the time, but I trusted my teachers and I went to South Carolina State. And my collegiate experience wasn't that great, honestly. The coach that I was connected with left, and a lot of kids have that story. And the head coach at the time, it's funny because when you think, what you said at the beginning about how athletics and sports influences your life. And but I learned so much in that experience of trying to prove myself and trying to get an opportunity to really play and not just be a part of it, but really get an opportunity. And I never quite got the opportunity that I felt I should have gotten. And but I learned, in hindsight, I learned so much along the way that when I ran into my coach 5 years after I graduated, um, I feel like he knew. He kind of gave me a raw deal. But I said to him, I appreciate it. I said, because what you gave me in terms of I call them my 4Ds, desire and dedication and discipline and determination. Like what you gave me in terms of me exercising that for something that I really love helped me so much in my professional life after. So I would say that, I was one of those kids that struggled to go from being a star in high school to not so much in college, and being the first person in my family to go. Maybe I should have went to a smaller school or D2 school. In hindsight, I could probably unpack that in a number of ways, but I would say I was where I needed to be because it really helped shape the man that I became.
Well, again, it's our mission to use sports to better our lives, and you did that. And now you're living the second part of our mission. That's using sports to better the lives of the people around us. So
Yeah.
tell us what you're working on with basketball, mentoring, coaching, and some of the kids that you're helping to find their path.
Yeah, yeah. So interestingly enough, I wasn't one of those players I thought I'd ever be a coach, and then just through happenstance of being in the gym and seeing some kids with some terrible form and just kind of trying to help them, I realized like, hey, you know what? This is pretty cool, and they would come back and want to learn more, and so the long and short of that is, I currently am one of the coaches with Mid Atlantic Select, AAU basketball club, which is out of Southern Maryland, but we generally draw kids from Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, sometimes even Delaware. And I've been with this organization about 10 years, and I would say what makes us unique is that we've really branded our organization as a development, in terms of development, in an era where no one wants to develop anymore. And actually, you see this even in corporate America. It's this idea of wanting to finish product, right, as opposed to taking time to develop. And we've really branded ourselves in that way, and have been very successful in helping young men, particularly in high school. So we generally do, your ninth, 10th, and 11th grade, so 15 through 17U. We've done a little bit younger before, but we've done a great job in finding these diamonds, I would say, that just needed more time or just needed, more energy put into their development. And that's turned into, like we talked before, about almost 90 kids, that became scholarship players. A couple of kids that have become professionals. In Europe, we have a couple of folks in the NBA. More recently, Josh Hart was in our organization when he was really young. Luca Garza, who was more recently he was in our organization as well. So these kind of players, and of course they end up becoming who they became. But we've had a number of players that are either professionals, obviously, and even more so have become really productive members of society. We have coaches and lawyers and pharmacists and you name it, that we've been able to help really make an imprint on their lives through AAU basketball. We really invest in our young people. And I always say I might coach you from 1 to 4 years, but I'm investing in you for a lifetime. And so we follow them when they leave our organization. We're still connected with them as they sort of matriculate through. I was just talking to a young man that was in an organization who was in the G League in Detroit the other day, just checking on him. Hey man, how are things going? Sometimes maybe a word from somebody that knew you back when, hopefully is inspirational and may help you a little bit. And so we're really passionate about what we do to really aid the betterment of these young people.
Well, it sounds like you're really interested in the full rounded version of the person, and not just athletics, but academics and social. And
For
you
sure.
mentioned you mentioned the 4Ds. How do you implement the 4Ds into your program?
Yeah, so listen, I think very, very early on, particularly at the 15U level, if we get you that early, right? It's this idea of desire, right? Is what is it that you really want? It's interesting. We just did a Division III showcase last week at Boys Latin in Baltimore, where we had about 65 kids. And once again, to your point, right? This holistic. We did financial literacy for these kids. We did a college coaches panel for these kids. And so we talked a lot about like desire is what is it that you really say you want, right? So I want to play college basketball. Maybe I want to play Division 1. Maybe I'm okay with Division 2 and 3, which obviously in today's time, you'd be lucky to play any of those. And so it's really sort of setting your head on that path. And then we challenge our players a lot of times to think more broadly than basketball. Think of your life. Like, what is it that you really want out of life? And then how can you leverage basketball as a tool to get there? Maybe it's just getting a free education, which we know with how much schools cost nowadays, that in and of itself gives you a head start in terms of adulthood. So desire is setting that up, right? And the second part of that then is the dedication. So now that's where we come in as coaches with experience. All of our coaches, including our director, are professionals outside of basketball, which I think makes our organization unique because we're not trying to get college jobs. And I'm sure we could do it, but that's not our passion. Like our passion is developing these young people. And so we help you set the plan, right? So now that you have a goal, our job is to use our experience to help set you on that plan. That plan is what we're going to do with AAU, who you may be training with. In some cases, where you're going to high school, some kids we've helped navigate from maybe situations that was not really going to feed what their desire is, and go to other schools, right? Then the third part I always say is really on the kid, and that's the discipline, right? Are you willing to do it when it's not convenient? Everybody wants to go to the gym and wants to play when it's convenient, but when you have to put some skin in the game, you have to make some sacrifices. A lot of times, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where some kids just realize, you know what, maybe basketball isn't the tool for me to get to what I said my desire was. And then the last part, which is the most important part, and this is something where I always say I put on the parents, right? Is the determination piece, right? So are you willing to stick to the plan if you don't see immediate results, right? And sometimes it's that expectation of how fast things will move and develop and happen. That's sometimes where I think parents and who may not necessarily understand the process, can become problematic in a way, and that affects the kids ultimately, right? Because we're hearing so many things coming from both directions. And so we try to mitigate that by always clear communication with parents about, where we see their young people. We make recommendations. Maybe in today's era with the transfer portal, most of our kids will go to prep school. Particularly if they want to play Division 1 basketball, right? Because like I said, we're developers, right? And so, so we kind of build that in. And so, what do we need to do from a practical standpoint to set that up? So really, that's kind of how we look at the 4Ds, right? I would say the first, the desire piece is really around, helping push these kids into thinking more broadly than basketball. The dedication piece obviously is the plan, and we come in with that. The discipline, and is of course going back to the young man, and then the dedication piece is what the work that we do with the families.
Well, you present it very well, and I hope people listen to you, but I know that we live in the microwave world where we want everything to happen fast, right?
Sure.
And not only that, but we want to be on TV our freshman year starting first game at a Division 1 school, right? I mean, the expectations sometimes from parents and community members and the pressure from their peers is to get to the top. And look, that's a great goal, but it's unrealistic, right? Not everybody gets there.
Sure.
As much as you wanted to go to Georgetown, Patrick Ewing probably took your scholarship or something like that,
and that's fine. But and you make a great point there too. Like, and a way that we've really assessed the success we have with our young people, right? And this is where where I would put our organization to much more high profile organizations like Team Takeover on the EYBL circuit, or even the Team Thrill. Something that I think that we really stick out as when you look at our players once they get to college, and the level of all conference type level players that we have, whether that's all conference and there's just their skill set or academically, that's where I feel like there's a competitive edge that we have in terms of all of this development. If you follow the process, because we're once again not trying to leverage the jobs, right? So our only vested stake is the betterment of the individual. you know. And so when you see what they do, I always say once they leave you, right? That's when you really, you know, feel good about the imprint you had as part of the village.
So for those that are going to listen and pay attention to this, where can they find you, Mario? What's the name of your program? What's your website? Give me some contact information.
For sure, for sure. Well, you know, just for more information on our AAU, with our AU program, midatlanticselect.org is our website. And you can see actually a list of our alumni in terms of the vast array of kids we've been able to support. Me personally on Twitter, if you at me at Coach Mario 13. And then I just also started an LLC that I'm building called Focus Energy. So at my Focus Energy is somewhere else you can find me. And what I'm trying to do with that is sort of reshape this idea of, because I train kids, these kind of things, but more of a basketball and let's say life consultant in that way. So, you know, trying to take that sort of my marrying passions of business and investing and basketball and tying those things together is something that I'm building there as well. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, at the German Boy, so DAGERMANBOY. That's sort of always what people called me because it was easy to remember that I was from Germany. So I've sort of always kept that nickname, if you will, along with me as well. So those are some ways that connect with me.
Well, I don't know when you sleep with all that going on, but I love what you're doing. I love the holistic approach. I love that you're putting the student athlete first and that you're calling them a student athlete. You're worried about academics. It's right in line with the players NIL is doing. I hope that we can stay in touch. Here's your parting shot. What's the words of wisdom for the world out there? Tell me what Mario's learned.
Well, listen, I would say I guess I'm an acronym kind of guy, right? And listen, the reality, and this is sort of born out of the fact that I tell kids all the time, the moment you start bouncing the ball in high school, at best, for 99% of you, your basketball career ends in 8 years. So when you start if you're 14 or 15, at best, you may have 8 years, right? And in some cases, you might have just 4, right? Or maybe 5, depending upon, you know, your matriculation that way. But I like to call it my think big philosophy, right? And the first, so when I think big, I use big as an acronym, right? And I say be diligent in reflection. I wish I'd been pushed more about reflection when I was younger. And what I mean by that is you're learning so many life skills through basketball. You're learning about being a good teammate. You're learning about leadership, right? You're learning about, as I mentioned to you in my own journey, right? This idea of dedicating yourself, becoming disciplined, all of these things that are valued as a professional, right? So I always say be diligent about reflecting on your journey and really learning more about who you are in the process. The second part then is the I, right? That's investing in yourself and knowing your worth. You know, with the work that you all are doing with NIL, right? Like, you know, when, you know, if you're gonna align yourself with a company, right? As opposed to just hoping that they cut you a check. Is there an internship opportunity? Are there ways that you can kind of really think more broadly than basketball in leveraging your name, image, and likeness, if you will? So really invest in yourself and understanding your worth. And then the final thing is give back and pay forward, right? You know, I have this map behind, and because when my son was in high school, I used to like to point out and say, this is you, and this is the entire world, right? That it's not just about you; it's much bigger than you. And there are a lot of people, you know, obviously, hopefully, that starts with your family or someone that's related to you, that's really making these broad investments into you. And then there becomes your village, like what we're doing with Mid-Atlantic Select, or what I do when I'm training my young people one-on-one. Like there's a lot of people that are investing in you. You're representing all of us. And so it behooves you that when you're in a position to help someone else, that you do that. That's what I tell all my players all the time. When they say, oh, when I get here, I'm going to do this for you. Don't do anything for me. Just help somebody else. And then you've done your due diligence. So be diligent about reflection. Invest in yourself, and definitely give back and pay forward would be what I leave you with.
Awesome. Well, I got goosebumps, man. You're a leader. You're a true inspiration. You're using athletics to better the lives of the people around you, the people in your program. I hope they appreciate all that you've given them and all that you do. And I look forward to following your progress and staying in contact. So you've been a wonderful guest, Mario. Thank you very much for being my guest today.
I really appreciate you and all that you all are doing as well.
Thank you.